Somebody should say something.
There's nothing to say. I've been to a lot of funerals. I folded the flag and given it to a lot of wives and fathers and kids. I told them how sorry I was. But that's not what I was really feeling. In the back of my mind, I was always saying, better them than me. But I don't believe that now. Because now I realize that there are some things worse than death, and one of them is sitting here waiting to die.
I don't want to die here.
You're the best
Best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
I need the best.
I had the best words.
Well, I'm the best there is.
The best. We the best.
Have a chance to be the best of the best.
You are now listening to Best of the Best, presented by Radar Studios. Starring two guys who use their middle initial to sound cool. Here are your hosts, Neal E. Fisher and Mark P. Smith.
So you saw it over the weekend?
I did. I took my lovely wife for our anniversary, and that's how you pronounce it, actually.
Anniversary?
Sorry, anniversary. My wife is a very astute horror movie fan. Mm-hmm. She has been for a long time. She actually introduced me to much of the genre when we started dating, and so we were both equally excited to see it. The trailer looked great, and we just decided, well, if we're gonna go out for our anniversary, go to the movies, we should see that movie. So yeah, it was really good. I liked it a lot. I think, according to my lady, she said that some of the more brutal parts of it, the kind of gory, more horror stuff, is actually like more reminiscent of what's in the book versus the 89 or 1990 movie.
Yeah, it was early 90s. Yeah, miniseries.
So in that regard, I mean, I think Tim Curry was great as Pennywise for sure, but
1990. Yeah.
But Skarsgård did an excellent job. Production design was great. It was. I mean, there's a couple like quibble things. I'm sure like every movie has its little issues or whatever, but I thought for the most part it was pretty entertaining. Good, solid horror film.
Well, we were talking about its massive opening of what is now being reported as
not your massive opening.
Exactly. Is the $123.1 million weekend.
That's crazy.
And some of the accomplishments that it made were largest opening ever for a horror movie, largest 3-day opening weekend for an R-rated movie, and the third largest opening in 2017. Also the largest opening for a September movie. So a lot of money made. I'm sure it'll continue. I know sort of the big sign of a success. The big signs of success of a movie in the theaters is its staying power. So we'll see if there's a drop off for next week. But
it depends on what movies come out too, I guess, right? Like
yeah,
another movie
I think that's
probably
true.
have another solid weekend, I would guess, before.
Well, also, the article that I was reading on comingsoon.net was saying about 175 theaters were closed in Florida due to Hurricane Irma.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So that they said...
I'm sure in Houston, they're probably not... I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to the movies.
And they were saying Florida typically represents about 5.5% to 6.5% of domestic gross. So that's a good chunk there.
We out here in Florida watching movies.
But yeah, Mark,
yeah.
You said, I mean, speaking of it... Probably. I mean, I haven't seen it, so I don't think we'll include it on today's show. Even though it was a remake of a miniseries, not of another movie. But you brought up doing the best remakes episode.
Yeah. Too bad we're not doing that today.
Oh, what are we doing today?
Best Tom Selleck films.
Oh, that's easy. Mr. Baseball, 3 Men and a Baby. Yeah, I could do it. Off the top of my head, let's do it.
Don't say Magnum P.I.
Well, no, that's a TV show.
What's that one with the robot spiders?
With Tom Selleck?
Yeah. He's like a cop. It's like a...
Oh, yes. He's a futuristic cop, right?
What's that movie called?
Runaway?
Is it?
I think so.
No, we are talking about best remakes. Again, another subject that's been on our list, been on our board for a while that we've been wanting to talk about. And it seemed, after going through our director's series, we wanted to kind of get back into our brand, which is sort of a little bit off, sort of different kind of specific genre type discussion. So
Right.
So best remakes it is, and I don't know what you think. This is my stipulation for putting together
Whatever
my
it is,
list.
it's probably bullshit. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
This is what I put together for my list of films. 'Cause
Can't be remakes of TV series. Can't be remakes of miniseries. Can't be remakes of TV movie adaptations.
it has to be completely original.
Has to be remade by the same director and within a 20-year difference.
No, and maybe you'll agree or disagree, and if so, it's not. I don't think it shouldn't inform what movies you want to talk about, because I think we'll just have a nice discussion. But
Spoiler alert, I've seen your notes.
but when I was going through it, the first thing I dropped off the list was comic book movies, because
Yeah.
there are a lot of comic book movies. They've been remade. Origin stories have been retold a million times.
Right. There's only so much we can talk about Spider-Man.
But that genre is, here's one of the things I don't particularly agree with people's sort of criticism of not to say you couldn't criticize a horror movie, but a lot of people will say, well, they're telling the Batman origin story again. We've already seen that. And it's like, yeah, but the comic book medium itself does that all the time. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't have a problem with comic book films redoing itself. You know, like if it's going to be good and it's interesting, fine. If it's shitty, then it's just shitty. It doesn't matter. You know, I think there's always room for a new perspective on, you know, even a favorite person like Batman or something. But so for this discussion today, do you agree? I think we're going to leave comic book films out of the
Yeah, no, that's
out of
fine.
the discussion.
Yeah, there's just too much there. I mean, they're constantly rebooted and remade because they need to keep either their licenses intact or you know, they just need more money. So that's fine with me. I have no comic book movies
Yeah.
here. I
my-
believe so.
So my my other stipulation was, I feel like it's either the remake itself, and I enjoy remakes. I think this is another criticism. People are like, oh, it's just a remake of another movie. And it's like, well, yeah, but if it's still a good movie, it doesn't matter to me. You know, like, so to me, it had to be as good as the original, if not, and hopefully better. You know, like hopefully it improved or had some sort of interesting take on it or perspective that, you know, warranted making it again. So like a example of what we won't be talking about, or at least I won't be talking about, is like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or
that was bad.
or Psycho,
Right. Bad.
or another one that here's another movie that's interesting to me that they remade, which was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, right.
And I love the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I was excited for the new one because the visuals, you know, the guy, I forgot his name, but he's like a music video director.
Yeah, he directed Smells Like Teen Spirit.
He has a good eye for, you know, they made some pretty visuals in that movie.
Samuel Bayer, sorry.
And I was excited about it. And there's a part in this movie that I was like, man, because a lot of people would say, like, why do you need to remake that? Freddy's so iconic, Wes Craven's take on it so iconic. But there's a part in that movie, if you know Freddy, the story of Freddy, you know, a bunch of parents get together and basically kill him because he's like a child predator, you know, and he comes back in their dreams, and the children of those parents' dreams, and kills them in their dreams, in their sleep. In the remake, they made it at a certain point in the movie, they made it seem like Freddy was the victim. They made it seem like they thought he was a child predator, but it turns out he wasn't, and he was killed unjustly, and he was coming back for revenge. And then in that case, you're like kind of rooting for Freddy, and you're like, oh man, that's a cool take on it. But then the movie kind of goes back to the same Freddy roots where he is like actually a child predator, and it's just the same thing. So there's like a real missed opportunity there. So that's another good example of what I don't think will make the list for me, that kind of thing.
Well, I think the best scene in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake is when Freddy, played by Jackie Earle Haley, goes, "None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me." No, that's from Watchmen, as he played Rorschach. As my
yell out, what did he say?
no,
Help. What is
our favorite quote that my friends and I always say, and my friend Ken can do it really well, is anytime Jackie Earle Haley's in a movie, you just expect him to go like, "The syphilitic pig carcass of New York," you know, like just like really dark and.
He was
gross.
in The Birth of a Nation, which I watched recently, which was pretty
Jackie
good.
Earle Haley was.
Yeah.
he really had a resurgence. You know, I used to watch him when I was a kid in Bad News Bears, which he was really good in. But he really had a resurgence with Little Children, which is it's a sad movie. Not sad. Well, yeah, It's
Oh, yeah,
sad
that's a
and,
good one.
and kind of dark, but Kate Winslet, Patrick Wilson,
Yeah, that's a good movie.
and Jackie
I
Earle
forgot about
Haley,
that.
who then would go on to...
He's a real creep.
No, yeah.
I don't know. He's not a real creep.
I
in
think
real
that's
life,
why he
but-
actually got cast as Freddy, because he played the creep in Little Children. Him and Patrick Wilson, from Watchmen and then Little Children. That's a great one if you haven't seen it. It's kind of heavy, but it's really well acted. Like, it's just sort of an acting
Yeah,
tour de
Patrick
force.
Wilson and Kate Winslet have like a real sweaty sex scene in that.
Yeah, on top of a dryer.
Yeah.
Or a washer, one or the other. I'm not sure if that was a sponsor of the film, but if it was, it definitely shook too
Product
much
placement.
in order to clean your
Whirlpool.
clothes correctly. So we're doing best remakes. I just wanted to make a couple notes. I'm probably not going to include these on my list, but a lot of people, there's a lot of movies that are remakes that I think people just go throughout life not knowing are remakes whatsoever.
Yeah.
So one example. One of the most well-regarded films of all time, Ben-Hur, with Charlton Heston. That's actually a remake of the 1925 silent film version, Ben-Hur. And that film, I believe, is also in the National Film Registry.
That older movie was actually titled Ben Him, right?
It was Ben-Him. They knew that they were being a little singular in
Yeah.
the way that they're depicting relationships between males and females, and then they changed it to Ben-Hur.
And then spelled it with a U.
Correct. Speaking of that, though, actually, His Girl Friday, someone we're probably going to talk about a little bit today is Howard Hawks, who's sort of an underrated, director, great director. But His Girl Friday is Rosalind Russell and Cary Grant, and he actually did something which was pretty... I don't know if revolutionary is the right term, but it's something that people do nowadays that you would think had been done a lot earlier. But His Girl Friday, actually, it's Rosalind Russell and Cary Grant, and Howard Hawks switched the gender of the lead reporter. So the lead reporter is called Hildy Johnson, and in the original film called The Front Page from 1931, Hildy Johnson was a man, and he was the lead. He was like this ace reporter, sort of like, the best reporter around. And Howard Hawks changed it so that Rosalind Russell would play the female version of that reporter, sort of bumping up females at a time when, they were sort of seen as secretaries and not on the same level as men. So speaking of gender swap, that was one I wanted to mention. Also, 10 Commandments. Cecil B. DeMille remade his own film. And a lot of directors have remade their own films. So Cecil B. DeMille is one of them. Alfred Hitchcock did The Man Who Knew Too Much. He remade, so he did that when as a British film, the original, and he remade it in America with Jimmy Stewart and Doris Day. And I think his reasoning was he just didn't think his British movies were as good, and he got the rights to remake it himself. And requested it. So that's one. And then someone we've talked to about a lot, Yasujiro Ozu has remade his own film. So there's a whole list you can...
I'm trying to think. I feel like I saw a film recently where a director remade his own film, like a modern...
Well, Funny Games, Michael Haneke.
Oh, yeah, that's what we were talking about.
That's
You're
one.
right. Yeah.
Heat was a remake of Michael Mann's failed TV pilot. There's Cecil B. DeMille, like I said, Takashi Shimizu, Ju-on, The Grudge. He did the original and the American remake with Sarah Michelle Gellar. And, and John Woo as well, Once a Thief. So, I just wanted to say that. So there's a lot of directors who remade their own movies. But as Mark said, I agree with you. I think just because a movie is a remake doesn't mean it's bad, as many of the remakes we're going to be talking about are either equal or better than the original counterpart.
Well, and also, I think about pop culture in general outside of movies. There's a real appreciation for originality, which I think is obviously justified. But there's a real criticism of people that remake a song too. Like, you think about some of the most appreciated musicians over the years. They've almost always, like, when people are like, oh, well, she doesn't write her own music, or he doesn't write his own music, blah, blah, blah. It's like, look at a guy like Elvis. All he did was turn, like, black blues music into rock and roll hits, Well,
all those guys in that era all did standards. I mean, Sinatra. I mean, they wrote a little bit, but they sang standards, other people's songs. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like there's not I don't think there's if you can do it well and you make it your own, there's I think it's worth celebrating just as much as the original. So
yeah, I think as they say that old phrase, it's like if you can put your own unique stamp on something, from the original, then it becomes your own. Obviously, you're inspired.
Is that the old phrase? It seemed like
the old phrase of putting your stamp on it.
the old phrase is if you can put a stamp on something and then make it better.
Well, Billy Wilder, who's one of my favorite directors, Some Like It Hot isn't technically an original film. He loved this French film, and basically it's kind of a funny story. So there's a French film called Fanfare of Love about two musicians who dress in drag and get out of a problem. And Billy Wilder loved it, wanted to do his own spin on it, but he couldn't get the rights to the French film. So him and his producer actually bought the rights to the German remake of it, if I'm correct. I want to say it was a remake. It could have been a German version of it, but it was a German remake. So Some Like It Hot was somewhat taken from an old film too, and that's one of the funniest comedies of all time on all these different lists. So Billy Wilder, directors as accomplished as him and as other directors we're going to talk about, if they can remake a movie and make it their own, then what's the harm?
Yeah.
So what's your first? I have your notes here, and I'm curious to see which one you're going to say first. But now, is it going to be? Let's see. It's not going to be Psycho by Gus Van Sant. I have it on your notes. Best movie ever.
That's just in my signature.
It's just it says
a link to the trailer.
Mark P. Smith, editor, Radar Studios. Psycho is the best movie ever.
With a hyperlink.
Parentheses Gus Van Sant version.
No, I think I'll start right off with a movie called Cape Fear. That was originally done in 1962 by director J. Lee Thompson, starring Robert Mitchum, who's one of my favorite actors of that era.
Robert Mitchum's
I love Night of the Hunter.
Gregory Peck.
So the original Cape Fear is a good film.
It is really good, actually. It's a very good film if you haven't seen it.
They shot a lot of that in Savannah, where I went to school. But the movie that I guess what we're talking about, the remake, is the Martin Scorsese version with Robert De Niro and that Robert Mitchum role and Nick Nolte, and essentially this, I think you'll find this with a lot of remakes we'll talk about today. This is like more, this is a remake of Cape Fear, but essentially the plot is the same. Mm-hmm. It's just been modernized, and I think in the Scorsese way, and in a way that most directors can't do, and only Scorsese can, is he finds a way to really make the pursuer, Robert De Niro's character, very compelling.
Well, he's like a charming.
He's like insanely brutal and like a rapist, murderer. Like there's some extremely just some really bloody, awful, brutal violence in this movie. But he's also got these really sweet, not sweet scenes, but scenes where he's like you said, like a real charmer. Where he's
he's kind of like, I guess, Ted Bundy. I mean, Ted Bundy was known as like a charming guy. That's how he got all those women.
He's like, there's something sort of attractive about him, even though people know he's dangerous. Like it's not a secret that, what I mean? Most people
you like tattoos. He's full of tattoos. He works out.
I love the Bible. But I there's not much really to say about this movie. I think it's a great remake. I didn't realize when I saw it originally that it was there was an older version of the movie. I saw the older version. I liked it a lot too. I guess I grew up in this era, so I prefer the newer film because it has more of a modern take on it, and there's more brutality, which I think pays off. In the end, it's got a great. The houseboat scene is, just done extremely well, and it's a great Scorsese film. I don't think it's one of his best films, but it's a really, really entertaining one.
No, this one's very entertaining. Nice cameos from Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum in the film.
Oh, that's right.
Martin Balsam. Yeah. This is sort of Juliette Lewis, her coming out party. It kind of made her a star. She was nominated for an Oscar along with De Niro. Do you know the trivia behind this as far as the Neal trivia? Because it involves Spielberg and Scorsese, two of my favorites of all time.
I don't think I do.
So originally, Spielberg was going to make Cape Fear, and Scorsese was developing Schindler's List. And
interesting.
Both of them weren't as passionate about each of these, and they traded. And,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
so Spielberg was going to do Cape Fear, and Scorsese.
God, that would be interesting to see those two movies done through the different prisms. You know what I mean? Like switched.
But Spielberg did stay on as a producer for Cape Fear, but he chose not to be credited personally because it's his friend Marty.
Well, those guys. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, that whole group of guys that came about in the '70s have a real fondness for the films of their childhood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of their coming up. So it makes sense that they would want to, remake some of these older movies. So I would love to see the Spielberg Cape Fear and the the Scorsese Schindler's List.
Yeah, it's interesting, and great performance by Nick Nolte. What this movie does and the original movie does so well, which will be the last thing I say about it. It might not be the only Martin Scorsese remake on this list. We'll see. Is this movie is basically everyone's fear and uncomfortable feeling of having to deal with someone that you don't want to deal with. So
Right.
A perfect example, I'm pretty sure they do the exact same shot in the original, if I remember. And I saw a lot of these, a lot of storyboards, notes, scripts, pictures at the Scorsese exhibit they had at the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens in New York when I was there. It was awesome. But there's a scene where Nolte and Peck in the original version are just sitting in their car, and De Niro comes up, or Mitchum in the old one, and basically it's just it's shot in a way where De Niro is leering over Peck. And when you're in your car, you feel safe, but it's one of those things, anytime you're in your car and your window's down and anyone is coming near it, I think there's just that innate what do you call it?
You want to lock the door.
You want to lock the door, Spidey sense. It's
Yeah.
why are you coming to my window in this opening and
Right.
and then he completely invades his personal space.
Yeah.
And then he does that not only with Nick Nolte, but he does it with his wife and he does it with his daughter, who's a preteen. So
Right.
I feel like this movie does that so well. Any of the scenes with De Niro,
Or not. Is she a preteen? She's just not.
or she's 13,
She's not an
right?
adult. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
and so
high school or something.
I just love the way De Niro plays it, and Mitchum did a great job too, where any room, any scene that he's in, anytime he's talking to someone, he's so, and De Niro's not a huge guy, but he's so confident and physically and mentally dominating.
Yeah.
That it's very creepy.
Well, and also both their characters are, I think, kind of extravagant in a way.
Yeah.
De Niro doesn't hide the fact. He doesn't hide he's got all the tattoos. He dresses kind of loudly. He's got the big car. You know what I mean?
His accent is a little too over the top,
Right.
But it makes sense.
Yeah, it's a good film. I would highly recommend watching them back to back. Just because I think they're both equally great. So, what you got?
Let's see where I want to go here first. One thing I wanted to note is probably not going to make our best of the best, and people might complain, but this movie has been remade many, many times, and I'm not sure if you know what I'm going to say, and don't look at the screen, though.
Freddy Got Fingered?
Now, if you're listening, you're probably like, oh, what?
Isn't Freddy Got Fingered just basically a Rashomon?
Yeah, Freddy Got Fingered is Rashomon, highly influenced by Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually going to say The Wizard of Oz, which
Oh, yeah.
I think there was 10 versions before 1939's
Well, there's
famous.
a lot of stories, too.
Right, and even L. Frank Baum's son, I believe, directed one.
I've seen some of those creepy, silent black and white ones.
And one of them was directed by L. Frank Baum's son. So I'm not going to put that on the list, but technically Wizard of Oz is a remake, if you want to say it, or pretty much a remake. But
I'm just going to throw out some random movies.
Throw out
Show
some-
everyone my vast knowledge of films.
random movies here. Okay, so I'm trying to decide, because a couple of these movies
By
we've
the way,
talked-
the latest remake version is with Sam Raimi,
it was really...
which is not necessarily, I guess, this Dorothy story. It's more of the
Oz
Oz
the
story,
Great and
whatever.
Powerful.
It was not good.
It was really bad.
With James Franco.
James Franco. So I'm just trying to decide which way to go. I know your list, so maybe I'll wait for one of them that I think is probably one of the best remakes of all time. So I'm going to go with 1964's A Fistful of Dollars.
Okay.
By Sergio Leone. Spaghetti Western obviously started the trend of spaghetti Westerns.
And why are they spaghetti westerns?
They're spaghetti Westerns because every scene someone's eating spaghetti. It's
Yeah.
really weird, but it's artful.
Yeah.
Or no,
Sometimes it's not spaghetti. It's cause it could be angel hair. It could be rigatoni. But generally, it's just people eating spaghetti.
Well, it's because most of the films were produced and made by Italians.
Yeah. And were they shot in Italy too? I couldn't. That's the stipulation I always forget.
Well, released in some of them were shot in Italy, some of them were shot in Spain. And most of them were in Italy. but co-production sometimes between Italy, Spain. A lot of them were in Italian and then they were dubbed. So Fistful of Dollars, like we were just saying, Akira Kurosawa. So Fistful of Dollars is a remake of one of my favorite Kurosawa movies, Yojimbo, and it's basically the exact same
That's how I used to
movie.
yell at my friend Jimbo.
Oh, like Yojimbo. Yeah. So Fistful of Dollars is great, but it's basically the exact same movie as Yojimbo, and Akira Kurosawa actually sued Leone out the ass because it's like basically a complete ripoff of Yojimbo, and they settled out of court. But as you know, A Fistful of Dollars is the Man with No Name trilogy.
Yeah.
And even in Yojimbo, if you're watching, he actually just takes his name from, I believe, like a cherry seller or a tree or something like that. I mean, he doesn't have a name either, even though it's called Yojimbo. But yeah, so very similar. It's the basic story. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend watch Yojimbo. I'm sure you've seen Fistful of Dollars, but it's about sort of this loner who's in the middle of two different factions of people that are kind of at war. So in Yojimbo, it's, two samurai clans. Fistful of Dollars, it was two gangs in a very limited area, and he sort of plays both sides to his advantage, playing both of them for fools. So Fistful of Dollars, I really, really like. Up until a long time ago, it still might be my favorite of the Man with No Name trilogy. I know The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is sort of the most famous, but A Fistful of Dollars, I have a soft spot for because I love Yojimbo, and it's just done really well. So I'm putting that one in there just because of the importance of Yojimbo, and I'm trying to look at your list here, and if it's what I think it is, okay. I'm just going to add one on top of this, just because we're on Kurosawa. I'm also going to put The Magnificent Seven, which is a remake of Shishini no Samurai, which is Seven Samurai.
Crazy.
And I'm sure everyone has seen Magnificent Seven. It might be one of the most classic films of all time. It stars Chris Pratt and Denzel Washington. No, I'm talking about the original from 1960 with Yul Brynner, Eli Wallach, James Coburn, Steve McQueen, and Charlie Bronson.
It's a hefty cast.
Yeah, so just want to talk, those two basically, Fistful of Dollars, Magnificent Seven, a dual entry here because they're Westerns and they're both based off of Akira Kurosawa films. I feel like, Akira Kurosawa is kind of ripped off constantly, whether it's Star Wars or Westerns or whatever. So, thoughts?
I saw those films on the list when I was trying to do research, but I don't know them as well as you do, so I left it for you to talk about. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no.
I do love. I don't know Akira Kurosawa. I only know a couple of the films, Seven Samurai and Yojimbo, and what's the other?
Sanjuro?
What did I say? Rashomon.
Rashomon was one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those ones I've seen a couple of times. My buddy is a huge Seven Samurai fan, a guy I grew up with, or I should say a Kurosawa fan. So he, and just like sort of Asian culture in general, or Japanese culture. So he turned me on to him a lot. I do love the spaghetti Western films, Good and the Bad and the Ugly being my favorite of the three. Mm-hmm. It is a good trilogy, but you're right. I mean, all those stories are classic. I mean, they're just, classic retellings of the same thing, in my opinion. But should I go?
Maybe we're on the topic of Westerns, so maybe I think I know where you're going.
Well, Neal forced my hand.
Are you going to go with the film that some call the best Western since Unforgiven?
Yes, I believe so. If that's what you're talking about, 3:10 to Yuma in 2007 is a remake of the same title, 3:10 to Yuma. The remake was directed by Delmer Daves, and the original was directed by Delmer Daves. The remake was directed by James Mangold of Logan fame. That's his recent film. I love this film. Again, this is another movie I didn't realize there was a original. It makes sense because it's a Western. There's been a lot of Westerns made. And my dad's a huge Western fan. He loves John Wayne. He loves like The Searchers and all those films. And I had said, if you really want to see a great Western, this is a good one. Because you're right, there hasn't been a lot of. It's just not a genre that I think modern audiences are that geeked for. Like
I think it's because they just move at their own pace and they're a little more laid back.
yeah, they don't work in the sort of rapid fire born supremacy world that we that movies sort of action films work in, and they're a little more like you said, a little more like drawn out, a little more slow paced, which builds a lot of drama and tension. But 3:10 to Yuma with Christian Bale and Russell Crowe is really excellent movie. I like this version better than the remake because the remake's fine and the plot is essentially the same. But I think a lot of these modern tellings, audiences are used to a certain type of film.
Right.
So like 3:10 to Yuma, there's a lot more characterization, I feel like. There's a lot more like the motivations are a little more clear. Like Christian Bale is kind of, he's a farmer and he's just trying to make ends meet. He's trying to save his land. And he basically gets this opportunity that he's sort of struggling with, where he's got to escort, like a criminal and get him on the train in Yuma, like the 3:10 train in Yuma. And he's got to basically, also, make sure that that criminal, Russell Crowe, who's like the leader of this gang, like his cohorts, the other bad guys, don't steal him back from Christian Bale. And Christian Bale is sort of a weak guy. He's sort of a normal schmo, but he's kind of a weak guy, and I think he doesn't get a lot of respect from like his son and stuff. You know what I mean? Like he's looking for an opportunity to help save his family, like a financial opportunity, but he's also looking for an opportunity to be a man and be like a stand-up person, to his son. The other great part about this, and I think this is a little bit in the original too, is Russell Crowe's character and Christian Bale's character are diametrically opposed. One's on the slick talking,
right,
bad guy, like leader of this bad guy who's world renowned or whatever, a criminal at the highest order, and then another guy who's, like I said, like a simple farmer, if we want to get in that term. But they have share a lot of similarities. There is a lot of respect for each other. Both guys have that kind of unfolds throughout the movie. So I love this piece. I love this movie. I like the whole ending of it is spectacular. It was a long time, but when I saw that movie, it's been a long time since I've seen a movie with that much like kind of tension and suspense. And I always like when what's his name, Ben Foster, who's always kind of
he's great,
off the wall.
Alan Tudyk was really good in this too.
Unpredictable element. So he's always great, and he adds a lot to this movie too. So I like this. Like you said, I think this is a great modern Western, and there's not a lot of good ones. So
no, yeah, I remember when this came out, they said it was the best Western since Unforgiven, and in my opinion, Clint Eastwood makes the best Western or directs the best Westerns out there. If we're not really counting like the complete filmography of Westerns in Hollywood, which there's a lot of good ones, but as far as I think bridging the gap between the old ways of doing things and sort of the modern sensibilities, he's really great at. But this one I remember in the theater, I was a big fan of Westerns. I had been on like a Western binge, and when I went to go see this, I thought Mangold really handled the suspense well, sort of the higher octane action that you're not usually used to in Westerns. Usually in Westerns, there's a lot of build up, and then it could be one shot and the guy's dead, and then the scene ends. But he really ramped up the explosions, the cat and mouse game, sort of the tension of Crow dragging around Bale. And I will say the original one stars an actor I've always been really fond of named Glenn Ford. And Glenn Ford is a man who's in a lot of Westerns in the old days, 3:10 to Yuma being one of them. Quick side note, 3:10 to Yuma is based on the Elmore Leonard short story of the same name of someone we talk about a lot, Elmore Leonard. But Glenn Ford you might recognize from Blackboard Jungle, The Big Heat, Midway, speaking of Tom Selleck. But the one film that he's in that has one of my favorite shots in cinema history, which Shawshank Redemption beautifully showed on screen, which I'm happy they did, is Gilda, where Rita Hayworth flips her hair back.
Yeah.
And he's really good in that movie, Glenn Ford. So he's sort of your classic, he's not like the most attractive leading man, but he just has that great hair. It's always slicked back with some nice pomade. And he's a guy that would smoke a cigarette and probably reek of like booze and cigarettes when he talks to you, but you respect him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's sort of what I think.
Kind of like how you are.
Exactly. I mean, I'm smoking right now.
Yeah.
In between here. Yeah.
It's your first cigarette.
First cigarette of all time. So yeah, 310 to Yuma, very nice.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like I was looking at this list as I was doing my research. I was like, man, I got a lot of like horror, sci-fi. There's a western. Like there's a lot of interesting genres.
I have a lot of variety here.
Like a great variety. Like my favorite magazine.
Yep. I'm trying to decide if I should continue going old, which I kind of want to, but you know what? I'm going to do one that is not on your list that I don't even know if you know is a remake. Have you ever heard of the film La Totale?
No.
It's a French film. A French film remade by a Mr. James Cameron as True Lies.
Oh.
So we've talked about True Lies a little bit on here. I might have been on our 1994 podcast, I'm guessing. But I know we talked a lot about it, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But it's sort of it's really I feel like the culmination of everything Arnold Schwarzenegger was working towards. Probably for the decade before. It had really, really good action, which is what James Cameron is known for. It had some great comedy, great, straight man, funny man thing with Tom Arnold in there. With Tom Arnold, it's probably Tom Arnold's best performance ever, honestly. So him and Tom Arnold are great. Awesome cameo from Bill Paxton as a shitty car salesman. Jamie Lee Curtis as sort of the timid wife who goes through transformation.
Stand up and beg for buttermilk.
Eliza Dushku, really great. Tia Carrera, great femme fatale turn in this.
Yeah, man, she had her heyday there.
Yeah, I mean, when she had this in Wayne's World, it was really the Tia Carrera show for a while. But
this is a really complete film for Cameron, like you said, because there is a lot of actually there is a lot of actual acting and comedy in this movie too. It's much more so than most of his other films,
Well, what's interesting about it is, you're right. There's a lot of action that on its own would be totally fine in an action movie, but then he puts these awesome action sequences on the same page as some comedy too. So like when Arnold Schwarzenegger is chasing the guy through the hotel and he's on horseback, there's like those little funny moments where he like knocks over the entire band, the string orchestra, and then there's this like really high action, and then he gets into the elevator, and then the horse is like smacking the woman in the face with its tail, like making the or whatever.
How does a horse fit in an elevator too?
Well, that's sort of the magic of it. But yeah, it's funny when you hear that this is a remake. The original, I haven't seen the original. I've heard that True Lies kind of is bigger and better in every way.
True Lies.
But you fired.
They actually blew up the old 7 Mile Bridge in that movie too.
That's such a great sequence when they're going down that 7 Mile Bridge.
No CG.
Yep. I mean, that's Cameron, man. Cameron is a maestro. So
he loves
True
CG
Lies.
now.
If we ever get another movie from him, we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, so True Lies.
I just hate the fact that I don't like Avatar at all. I think it's executed great. It's fine, but it's just a cartoon to me. And I just hate the fact that he's going to make like 3 more of those or whatever it is. It's just
I'm going to jump on that train with you. I respect James Cameron a lot.
310 to Hayden.
310 to Hayden. I think Avatar is important. I think the fact that it was released and it did so well is great. It's a well-made movie, but I don't want Cameron to be stuck in that for the next. I mean, he's going to be stuck in that for like the next 10 years, 12 years, and he already has been. They keep pushing back the movies. It was 1 sequel, now it's 3 sequels. So
yeah,
I mean, Cameron, his filmography is so awesome. I just wish we'd get another.
Come back and make a Terminator movie. Fuck it.
Well,
all these other ones are so terrible.
Yeah, they are,
or whatever. Yeah. I mean, some make. My options were another Avatar movie or Terminator 3. The way he sees it, I'd go for that.
No, I could totally see that. I mean, just his filmography is so diverse and cool, and I would love to see another live action film from him, other than Avatar. But not saying that Avatar is bad. It's a very important movie. It's very entertaining, and it will not be on this show as a remake of Fern Gully, or Dances with Wolves. But yeah, what do you think? That's some snide sub commentary.
No, I love True Lies. We've talked about it before, and I didn't realize it was a remake. So that's news to me right here on the old podcast.
Breaking news. Here.
I'm gonna pick another movie here.
Okay.
Here it is. Dawn of the Dead.
Oh,
2004.
Definitely on my list, man.
Directed by Zack Snyder, who is one of my favorite directors. I think he's fallen off a little bit. He's
misunderstood. He's ridiculed he's over ridiculed more than he needs to be.
Yes, I would say he's a lot of times a lot of style and substance doesn't equal that style, but he makes a beautiful film. Nonetheless, they're always like great to look at, and then, sometimes that can carry you through just at least watching it. And but this is his first feature film, I think. Right? Am I wrong about that? This is before 300.
No, this is the first one that he'd done, and I'm sure you're going to say this, or maybe you won't. But written by now household name James Gunn, who was a writer on the project.
Yeah, the obviously this is I don't know if it's obvious, but it's a remake of the same Dawn of the Dead by George Romero, the sequel to this is the third movie in his trilogy or the second one? It came out in 1978, but it was essentially about the people that hold themselves up in the mall to avoid the zombie apocalypse. Of course, the 1978 version has a lot of sort of overtones, kind of consumerism overtones, which is like really ahead of its time when you think about it, considering like nowadays. But what I love, there's one element in Dawn of the Dead. The whole movie itself is great. There's a couple elements, let me tell you.
Okay.
That I love about this, and I knew that Zack Snyder had a future in the biz, as they say.
Right.
One, a lot of people criticize this and they hated it, but the zombies run. And
it was terrifying.
I thought that was terrifying. Yeah. And I think this is the first one, right? It's 28 days later they do two, right? But this is the first. Because 28 days later are zombies technically, but they're not like.
Right. Well,
it's
I
like
feel
more
like
of a disease or something.
Knowing Danny Boyle, they didn't want to call them zombies because it was beneath them. But
so this is the first movie, as far as I understand, at least popular zombie movie that had the zombies running. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, zombies don't do that." Like, and I understand, like that's almost like it's almost like if you had Dracula and he like
flies around or something.
It like didn't suck blood, But I thought
there's an adult film where he doesn't suck blood. It's on your shelf
with the other clamshell VHS adult films I have.
Yeah.
The running element though is a game changer in horror to me.
Yeah.
Because it makes it so much more frightening. Like it's just like others, like even in Walking Dead, like if you follow the show, and I love Walking Dead, but the show really kind of transcends the zombie part. It's really just about the human interactions. Because the zombies are relatively, unless they're in a huge horde, they're relatively easy to like deal with because they're not moving very fast. They're really dumb. You know what I mean?
Well, that was sort of the charm of the original of Romero. Just a quick side note is from a film analysis standpoint, the zombies always moved super slow, and it wasn't the fact that the zombies were going to get you right away. It was, what are you dealing with on the inside of your house, like the differing personalities and problems. And the zombies are really just a metaphor for, it's just existential, like of death. Like it's going to get you.
Creeping
it's just
along,
it's just a matter of when, and you're trying to hold off death as much as possible. But then in most zombie movies, people are basically kill each other over zombies killing them because they can't handle working together.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's a good take. Another element of this film that I loved, and it's the first time I've seen the movie, and maybe you've seen it before this, and you can, I would love you to expand on it, but my buddy and I watched this movie, and we were like, holy shit, because the end credits.
Yeah.
Usually when you hit the end credits, it's just a scroll of names, and most people leave the theater at that point. Sometimes I like to watch all the names because being in the business, I like to kind of appreciate all the people that are involved.
I usually
making
stay
the
for
film.
the whole thing, just because you got to respect everyone's job on it.
And sometimes there's a film, like a Marvel film, where there's going to be like a little like, a little button at the end or something. But in this case, there's actually like more story that happens in the credits. Like there's actually main characters that like, and their stories evolve. Like if you watch the movie and the movie ended and you left, you wouldn't understand that like some of the main characters end up dying after that. You know what I mean? Like in the end credits, they have that whole like found footage sequence where they had the videotape and they cut in and out of like
with the island.
We found this island. We're safe. And then all of a sudden, what is that? And like zombies and and they do that, and they, it's the only time I've ever heard the ooh, wah, that song.
Oh, that's
Down with
right.
the Sickness, actually used pretty well.
How
So
about
that was a game changer for me too. That actually, like, the credits were actually important. Like, there was actually more movie. It wasn't like a gag reel. It wasn't just like visuals or graphics. It was actually like more plot that was happening in the movie that basically like said, yeah, everyone's fucked, and I think that was pretty cool. So.
No, I thought that was really cool too. There's a great turn by Ty Burrell, who everyone knows now as Phil Dunphy from Modern Family, but he plays like the biggest asshole.
Yeah, he's so great.
He's really good in this movie.
What did he say? He's like, yeah, we'll just walk out there with a ham sandwich held above our heads and see whatever.
Yeah, he's really good in this one. Yeah, it was definitely a great entry for Zack Snyder. Say what you will about him, but like you said, he has a lot of style, and this might be one of his best films. To remake something that's so loved and revered as George Romero's Dawn of the Dead.
People will like this movie. I think horror fans are a fan of this movie.
I think so. I mean, I am, and I'm a horror fan. I think that he did a really nice job with it. And yeah, the zombies were pretty terrifying. Kept a lot of the elements of the original one, but updated them, as we said. So he put his own stamp on it and updated it. Moving right along, I know I was, saying that I wanted to maybe go newer, but it's tough here. So a couple mentions, honorable mentions that are kind of in the mix, but I doubt they were going to make the final. Is a Little Shop of Horrors, directed by Frank Oz, remake of the Roger Corman film. The remake had Rick Moranis, Steve Martin. Kind of a weird film. A lot of people either like it or you don't. But it was a remake of the original, which had Jack Nicholson, which a lot of people don't realize. One film I want to talk about quickly, Heaven Can Wait, which starred Warren Beatty and Julie Christie and James Mason, Charles Grodin. That film is a remake of Here Comes Mr. Jordan. It's a fun movie just to sit down and watch. It's not gonna like change your life or anything. It's a fantasy comedy. Hollywood has done so many of these films. Whether there's a guardian angel, someone goes to heaven, they come back, they're in someone else's body. A lot of different storylines, but the basic storyline for Heaven Can Wait is a backup quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams is wanting to lead his team to the Super Bowl. When he's riding his bike, he gets killed, and he wasn't supposed to die. So an angel basically says, "Oh, it wasn't your time yet. We're going to put you in the body of this millionaire, and you can kind of live out the remainder of your time there." And he's in this millionaire's body who's ostensibly like older and would never be able to play football. So he buys the Los Angeles Rams to be their quarterback, and everyone sees him as this old dude, but he's actually Warren Beatty. You might remember it as the remake with Chris Rock called Down to Earth.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, one of your favorites. I was going to do a Chris Rock impression, but I heard Jay Farrow in my head, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it that well. But I'm actually going to go. I know this is on your list, and I want to
Getting your salad tossed. Sorry.
Let me tell you about the day.
I don't know. You sound like Red Fox. Oh, man.
So this film I know is on your list, and I know we're going to gloss over it because we've talked about it so much. But it's one of the best remakes of all time, and it's undeniable that it should be on this list in the top. Probably in the top 5. It's The Thing from 1982. Yeah. John Carpenter remade the. How
many times have we talked about The Thing?
We've talked about it so many times, and we won't go. So go back to our John Carpenter episode
or our one room location. Yeah, I think.
So remake from The Thing from Another World. Sort of a debate that's raged through Hollywood about who directed The Thing from Another World. A lot of people say it's Christian Nyby, but a lot of people also say that he did that to get his Directors Guild card and that Howard Hawks actually directed it. Or you can go on the camp that no, Christian Nyby was the director, but he respected Howard Hawks so much that basically every decision he looked to Howard Hawks to make. Sort of the similar situation of Poltergeist, where Steven Spielberg directed the movie, but Tobe Hooper did him a favor because
R.I.P. Tobe Hooper.
R.I.P. Tobe Hooper and George Romero.
Yeah.
Where Tobe Hooper didn't direct Poltergeist, even though he's credited, because there was a guild strike and Spielberg wasn't allowed to direct it. So Tobe Hooper was director in name only. But Howard Hawks is going to get talked about a decent amount today. And this is one of the films that was remade.
Unlike Hudson Hawk
Hudson
that
Hawk.
you usually talk about.
Well, anytime we could talk about Bruce Willis and Hudson Hawk, I think written by Sheldon Lettich.
Anytime Bruce Willis is wearing a fedora, I'm excited.
Yeah, you like my fedora?
Yeah, you ever see my fedora? I'm gonna steal some stuff in this.
Yeah, I'm a cop, but I'm also a regular guy.
I can do comedy as well. Have you seen the whole 9 yards?
How about the whole 8 yards or 10 yards, whatever? But yeah, the thing, what more is there to say about it? Remote location.
One of John Carpenter's best.
John Carpenter, great score. Kurt Russell, great visual effects.
Visual effects are still excellent in this movie too.
So yeah, we don't need to talk about it.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, just turn this off.
And I haven't seen the original, so that would be kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, actually, it would be fun
Yeah.
to watch The Thing from Another World. I've only seen a few scenes from it, so I've never seen the original. But it very similar. They're trapped in an outpost. It's just, I believe that one's more of a commentary on aftermath of Hiroshima, I believe.
And I guess both films are really based on the book Who Goes There, that came out in 1938, written by John W. Campbell, which is another thing I did not know. I just thought there was a remake.
Oh, I
of
didn't know that
film.
either.
Yeah.
Everything is a remake, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, The Thing. So check it out.
This one, I think, this is a good remake, and I think this next one is a good example of a remake, but like a way where a director took them, like we've been talking about, modernized it and kind of formatted to the world that we live in. And that movie is Scarface. Came out in '83, directed by Brian De Palma, obviously starring Al Pacino, Booty Sweat.
Okay.
This is like every rapper's favorite movie, apparently.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Every time you watch Cribs, there's always like a Scarface.
This is the most famous movie on dorm room walls and rap lyrics.
And the funny thing about this movie is when you watch it, it's pretty cheesy. There's a lot of over the top shit in this movie. That's why I was kind of excited to see the sort of now plagued Leo DiCaprio version.
Yeah, man.
But this is a remix of Scarface from 1932, directed by Howard Hawks and Richard Rawson. And maybe you have some trivia on why they're involved in this one as a duo. But the original Scarface is loosely based on Al Capone's rise as a gangster in the Prohibition era, 19 Chicago, and that's what the original Scarface is really about, is a gangster, a guy who comes up through the ranks. He's an Italian immigrant who is, been treated poorly by the rest of society, and so he finds power and he finds his place in the world, by becoming a gangster. Similar to the 1983 version that we're talking about, the remake, where Tony Montana, played by Al Pacino, basically comes to Miami on a boat from Cuba, and it comes here with nothing. And by the end of the movie is like one of the largest like coke dealers in the world. And it's a similar rise to Infamy, and also another it's another anti-immigrant guy who feels shit on by society, by the new world, doesn't totally accept him, and so he just says, "Screw it, I'm gonna basically with the quote in there, the world is yours." So he just takes the world by the balls. He steals his boss's girlfriend, makes him. Both movies have the same plot line as far as that goes. But Scarface is a fun movie. Like I said, Brian De Palma, I think he's made better films, but this one is definitely has Say Hello to My Little Friends is like probably one of the most quoted lines of all time. So
or the classic, all I have in this world is my balls and my word.
Yeah.
And I don't break them for no one. Hawker.
But like a Brian De Palma film, it's very gory. It's very, like I said, a lot of these modern tales like Cape Fear, it's a much more brutalized version of that story. So I really like the Howard Hawks Scarface. It's up there with like White Heat for me, some of those James Cagney older gangster films.
I believe Al Capone, I think he had a print of his own that he would watch because he liked it so much.
I think that is right. But yeah, so I think
written by Oliver Stone.
Yeah, written by Oliver Stone. Like I said, it's an interesting transition from portraying America underworld or whatever, crime world in the 30s or 40s or whatever, and then doing it in the 80s. very very much similar, but more modern. So I think it's a really good example of a good remake. So
No, yeah, great. I mean, it's over the top, it's campy, but I think that's why it's sort of lasted so long. Young Michelle Pfeiffer playing against Al Pacino. Yeah, I'm just going to talk quickly about sort of a film that solidified the film noir genre. It's a classic with Humphrey Bogart, Maltese Falcon, and that film is a remake. So the original version of the Maltese Falcon was made pre-Hays Code. And if you don't know what the Hays Code is, then just look it up. It's also known as the Production Code. So when the Production Code came about, it really put restrictions on what Hollywood could show. It was them wanting to control what is put on screen in terms of decency. The original Maltese Falcon. I think it opens up with...
This is before ratings.
Yeah, it's before ratings. It's them can't kiss for too long. Women can't show, skin that much. Smoking, things like drinking. So John Huston...
movies wouldn't even show a ceiling.
Right. I mean, the original Maltese
Citizen
Falcon...
Kane broke the ground and showing the ceiling of a space.
So the original Maltese Falcon... I think opens with a woman putting her pantyhose back on after presumably having sex with our lead character. The film is based on the Dashiell Hammett novel of the same name, famous detective Sam Spade, which everyone I'm sure is familiar with. And you had Mary Astor in the film, great performance by Peter Lorre and Sidney Greenstreet, sort of mainstays of Warner Brothers there. I just wanted to mention this one because it is technically a remake, and while it was under the Hays Code and didn't have the same freedom as the original, it definitely is better than the original because of the performances of Humphrey Bogart, Greenstreet, and Peter Lorre. But the one I actually want to talk a little bit more about, which I know is on your list, but I'm just going to say it anyway, is I saw a film called Infernal Affairs, just kind of randomly. Before 2006, and I really enjoyed it. The film is from 2002. Wai Kung Lao is the director, and it's a team, right? Alan Mock, or no? But anyway,
there's two directors.
Two directors, right?
For Infernal Affairs,
So Infernal Affairs, very much a cat and mouse game. There's a mole in the police department, and then there's an undercover cop who is a mole in the mob, and the whole movie is just you trying to figure out, and the characters trying to figure out what's going on. And Andy Lau is really really good in Infernal Affairs. A lot of people knock this movie. It's not super super strong, but it definitely provided the groundwork for the only film to ever win Best Picture that was a remake, which is Martin Scorsese's The Departed, starring Matt Damon, Leonardo DiCaprio, Jack Nicholson, and Alec Baldwin. There's a great Alec Baldwin quote I'm going to look up when you talk about it, because I used to quote it with my friends all the time because he's such like an asshole in this movie. But under Mark's notes here, actually I'll let you read your own notes. So The Departed did a few things. I loved in Infernal Affairs that the characters used Morse code in order to communicate between the mole and the mob and the police department and all that. Especially the whole concept of one of the characters using Morse code, and he had it inside of his arm cast. But what The Departed did, which was really smart, was it changed it to cell phones, and you created this love triangle between Vera Farmiga and the characters. And I think adding the sort of impotence to Matt Damon was a really interesting choice, because Matt Damon has always been sort of seen, not always as like a George Clooney leading man, sort of a sex symbol, but Matt Damon's always been up there, with him and Brad Pitt as sort of the leading man, representing sort of vigor, and his character, is basically impotent, and he's a police officer who loves having that power, but he doesn't really have the power himself in order to fulfill his love life. So I love that aspect
He's
of
like
it.
the Ted Cruz of this movie.
He is, yeah, you're right. And DiCaprio's really good in this, and then Nicholson, of course, basically just getting to do whatever he wants.
Scorsese's first Oscar win too.
Scorsese's first Oscar win, presented to him by his friends Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas. And which is so funny. When the Oscars came up, you knew that Scorsese was going to get it, but when Spielberg, Coppola, and Lucas were the presenters, it's like, why would they give it to anyone else as best friends? So
it was the his scent of a woman moment.
Exactly. Sort of the Oscar for all of his previous work.
In the original Infernal Affairs, the Matt Damon character isn't killed, right?
No, if I remember correctly,
that's what I like about
this one.
That's what I love about the Departed's ending.
Yeah, it goes all out, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to give anything too much away, I guess. Although,
if you haven't seen Departed, fuck you.
Yeah, that's true. Just like Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
Who are you? Fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck me. Fuck you.
My brother and I always go, "What are you? You're not a cop. You're not a cop. You fucking cocksucker.
You're not a cop. You cocksucker.
You're not a fucking statey."
Oh God.
But the Boston accent in the movie is so good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Hollywood just always takes the Boston a little too long.
This is also a little bit of a Whitey Bulger thing too.
Yes, it has a little bit of Whitey Bulger. Yep.
Jack Nicholson's character is, represented or basically based on Whitey Bulger and his crime syndicate in Boston. So.
Well, no, and
this is a good film, and when it came out, I was like, man, it's a shame he won it for this and not like Goodfellas or Raging Bull or whatever, like something that I think was totally deserved of. But upon other viewings of this film, I do think this is up there with one of his best films. I just think, I think I had the sort of tinted view of it where I was like, yeah, this is not Goodfellas. I mean, it's still good, but I was like, it's not. But then if you just separate that and just watch the film as it is, it's really, really good. And I love, one of my favorite parts of it editorially is the opening. Like there's 20 to 30 minutes of that movie and then the credits roll. And I think that's like the coolest thing. Like when Leonardo DiCaprio first goes to jail and then they cue in the Shipping Up to Boston, the Dropkick Murphy song.
Yep.
And then they put the Departed on there. And I was like, oh man, like it makes you feel like, oh, we're really in for something. Like we're really going to get into something,
Yeah, and that song is sort of overplayed, but it works really well in the opening of this film. A few little extra things. Scorsese, a film historian in his own right, along with that whole era of directors as we talked about.
Preserve film?
Preserve film.
Preserve my eyebrows?
He loves the original Scarface from 1932, and his homage in this film is he puts X's everywhere. So if you watch this movie and you want to have a drinking game, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, look anytime there's an X on screen because they're everywhere, mostly to foreshadow a character's death. But he tries to get X's in many of the shots in this film. And the quote I was looking for Alec Baldwin is because he talks so fast in the movie. He does a thing where he's like, I'm going to go have a smoke right now. You want to smoke? You don't smoke, do you? Right? What are you? One of those fitness freaks? Huh? Go fuck yourself. He's really good.
He's it's almost like an extension of that character he played in Along Came Polly. He's like Ben Stiller's boss or whatever.
Great film.
Yeah, Departed is definitely on my list. It's high up there for me. It's a great remake of Infernal Affairs, and I think it's a superior film as well.
Yeah, it's better than the original. Yeah, I used to think that Infernal was better, but after kind of watching them again, it is definitely better.
No, Infernal is better, guys. That's what he said. So the next movie, it kind of in the same realm, not same realm film-wise, but director-wise. I'm going to go with a little movie called A War of the Worlds from 2005. Directed by Steven Spielberg, of course, starring Tom Cruise.
Man, I could talk about this movie a long time because I saw it so many times in the theater. And
the original, which is the original film from 1953, directed by Byron Haskin, is called The War of the Worlds. Is plot-wise pretty similar. Like the aliens come to Earth, they eventually catch colds, essentially from our germs and stuff, and they perish. What I think, again, I'm just going to go back to this. I'm going to reinforce this idea. Like the modern telling of this is probably even more interesting, given the audience, because Tom Cruise character, like in the original '53 film, is like a married man, with children or whatever. But in this film, he's divorced. Like there's some tension, like there's already tension which I think is more natural to what people go through. Like people, like when natural disasters happen or something freakish like these hurricanes or something, it's like not everyone's in a great place, and then they have to deal with that on top of it. And you learn quickly that he's a single dad trying to gain the respect of his kids. His mom, his wife has moved on and is like married like a wealthier dude, and you can tell his kids are sort of begrudgingly like with him for the weekend or whatever it is, and he's just trying to do the best he can and win their respect back. But then all of a sudden, alien invasion comes, and that whole sequence where they escape their house, where they basically leave, where all those people are getting zapped up, and the road starts to crack and just come apart. Is pretty rad. It sticks in my mind as one of like cooler like cinematic moments. And I like this movie a lot. I had when I left the theater, I was like, really, the aliens come and they get a cold, but then I've learned that like that is the original story, so I can't really fault the Spielberg version of this movie all that much. When Morgan Freeman does his little narration at the end, but. I thought this was a great remake, and I think it's like a really nice way of. This is a very classic story from the Orson Welles radio to the 53 film. This is a movie that's been in this this is a story that's been in the zeitgeist, and sort of like almost like the original Alien Invasion movie. Like before this it's kind of like the one that kind of like was popular and sparked it. And I think Spielberg did a good job, and obviously he has a lot of experience with the alien sci-fi genre. So.
Yeah, I really love this movie. I think a lot of people look down on it because of its popcorn factor, but Spielberg's kind of gone on the record as saying this is one of his reactions to 9/11. The film is very reminiscent of a giant attack like that. So a lot of people will say that the movie kind of falls apart in the end, and the first hour of this movie is almost perfect. There's a great article on birthmoviesdeath.com. It's called In Defense of Spielberg's War of the Worlds. One of the many articles that is well worth a read. So the first hour of this movie is just awesome. I remember when I first saw it, the tripods are terrifying when they come out. The whole sequence of crews running and people are getting vaporized is basically, it's images reflecting 9/11 as far as ashes being on everyone and on Tom Cruise. The thing that this movie does that's so smart compared to a lot of other disaster movies of a similar kind is it's solely focused on Tom Cruise's experience. You're following one guy and his daughter and his son, and his only mission is to get his daughter and son home and safe and accounted for. And it's a lot different from other movies. And Tom Cruise, someone who we've sort of looked at as a hero in every film that he's done, isn't the best dad. He's just trying to do his best to keep his family alive, and he's making decisions, on the run in these unbelievable circumstances. Now, where people say that the second half of the film falls apart, rewatch the whole sequence with Tim Robbins. It's pretty terrifying. I think.
What do you think about that? I feel like it was unnecessary.
It was it's also in the book.
It is terrifying. It's well
terrifying.
Done. I just don't.
But the thing that this article talks about, which is really interesting, is think about being in a situation like that, a giant terrorist attack, where now no one trusts anyone, and everyone goes into survival mode. This is my house, this is my land, this is my goods, my food, my water, and Tom Cruise is put up against that, and how terrifying it would be not only a physically imposing person as Tim Robbins is, he's so much taller than Tom Cruise, but someone who's putting your daughter's life in danger, and then the decision he has to make to take him out, and that his son's gone, so he doesn't know if his son's alive.
I think I kind of get that though without that scene though.
No, I think you can too.
You know what I mean? Like
it's if you rewatch it, it's done really, really well, I think, and according to the original story, it should be in there. And I think the one thing that this article does say, which I think is a good defense of the ending. It's the same ending in the book. Everyone doesn't like the ending that it's happy, but as this person says here, I'll just read this last little thing here. There's nothing wrong with a certain amount of happiness in an ending, especially when it's earned. And anyone who can watch the first tripod attack, the shooting at the ferry, the murder of the survivalists, the burning train, people drowning in their cars when the ferry is capsized, and humans being turned into mulch, watch all of these things and claim that War of the World didn't earn a little bit of happiness, possesses a darker heart than I.
Well, I also think it depends on your perspective, because to me, I always think Spielbergizes a lot of movies where like he all of a sudden like everything is wrapped up neatly, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think in this case, it is how the movie is. I do like the fact that like his wife gains some respect for him and like understands that like he protected their children and and his son especially, because there's like a real tension between between the son and the dad. It also gains respect for his father, and I think that's kind of the main message in that movie, I feel like, and they go through that. Maybe that wouldn't have happened without that traumatic situation, but now that I'm a father, I have a different perspective on happy endings and sad endings. I think sometimes I see a happy ending and I'm more inclined to be okay with it, or I'm more tolerant of it, because if it involves kids and family, it's like, okay, I feel better about that. Like when you're not in that situation, like pre-kids, I was like, oh, really? Like the guy should have died, or the kid should have died. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So I think it's always perspective, and I think in this case, it's not warranted, the criticism of it, because I think, like I said, he was true to the material, and I think that if anything, everyone goes, well, it wasn't true to the book, So I think,
well, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
And
but it's a good remake. I love it. I think it's great.
Well, yeah, and I think one last thing too.
I prefer to watch this than listen to Orson Welles, to be honest with you.
Well, no, for sure.
Radio.
And the action in this movie is great. There's so many good action sequences. It's shot really well by Janusz. And if you watch the ending too, the world is undoubtedly changed. It's going to be different. They have all the shots of the monuments in the town that have been either broken or covered in vines from the aliens that are starting to die, and everything's going to be different. And if you notice, Tom Cruise isn't invited into the house where he drops his son off. He meets him on the street. He hugs him. Yeah. And I think the reason it ends there is just because he saved his son doesn't mean he's going to get welcome back into the family and get his wife back. He's still the same guy who's broken and doing his best, and that's
earned
just
the respect.
Right. He might have earned the respect, but he just did the best that he could, and he's just going to go back to his own life now. He's not going to. It's not like he's invited back into the family. He just did what he was supposed to do, which is protect his kids. And if you want to hear a really great story about War of the Worlds and the premiere and when I met Tom Cruise and also Steven Spielberg, go to the other podcast I co-host, Triviality Podcast, and it is episode 12, Making You Have Fun with Steven Spielberg. I talk a little bit about there, and I can I don't want to go into it right now, but it was me at the War of the Worlds premiere in London when I met Tom Cruise, and I think you'll enjoy it. And plus, that whole episode revolves around Steven Spielberg in a way, as far as trivia is concerned. So, hope you guys enjoy that.
Yeah, it's a really good hand job story.
Just a few I want to mention here before we depart to deliberate. We talked about Ocean's 11.
Yeah, I had that on my list.
With our
we just talked about it recently. So
right, on our Steven Soderbergh episode. There's one left on your list that I'll let you talk about, but I just wanted to throw in David Cronenberg's The Fly, starring Jeff Goldblum.
They're remaking that again, right?
I think I heard that, yeah. So Cronenberg obviously brings his own brand of twisted makeup, humor, darkness to The Fly remake, and it's definitely
probably his most popular film, because he's kind of a cult director, I feel like.
No, it was his most, definitely his most commercial film. He might be more known for, Videodrome or Scanners or something, but...
Or Crash, right?
Or Crash. But The Fly is definitely his most popular film. And in the same lines, Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Donald Sutherland, a remake of the Don Siegel picture. The reason this one is so important is a few things. You've probably seen the meme of Donald Sutherland pointing with his mouth open that people use where he looks terrified. But what Invasion of the Body Snatchers did is it actually changed the ending and made it a very grim ending, which was sort of new for certain sci-fi horror films like that, and it was kind of a surprise compared to the original. So it did take the original and change it a little bit for the better, I think, and I think that's a great one. So definitely one to check out.
Yeah, so the two movies I had left were Ocean's 11. We talked about that recently, and you can hear that about our
just scroll one episode back.
But it's a great remake, and I would say it's a superior film to the Rat Pack version. The Rat Pack version is fine, but I think
it's much better. Yeah, much better.
It's actually makes more sense in some ways too. And they happen. Again, I think Soderbergh captured that quote unquote coolness that the only the Rat Pack could have done. But the last movie I have on my list, and there's more remakes, obviously, but this is one of the more notable ones, was The Ring by Gore Verbinski. Came out in 2002. The original Ringu, the Japanese film in '98, was directed by Hideo Nakata.
Hideo.
And both films are actually based on a novel called Ring, which is author is Koji Suzuki. And both of these movies are essentially this. Again, these are another. These aren't made that much different many years in between each other. There's only 4 years, which I think you're seeing a lot now in remake town. Is a lot of movies that are like made right away. Like there's a lot of movies that are to be popular overseas, and then American, and then just like sequels or whatever. The studios go, oh, we can do that here. Let's make the American version. Let's make an English speaking version of that same movie. It's not always superior. It's hard for me, it's a toss-up whether Ringu or Ring is better. I like Ring, I guess, slightly better because I think the visuals, Gore Verbinski is very, very good at putting together, just like Zack Snyder can make a really pretty image, So I would say like Ring to me is slightly superior, but Ringu is really good too. But I love those Japanese ghost stories. They're super terrifying because I think ghost stories, especially because of the lampooning of them, like with Ghostbusters and other movies like that, ghost stories in themselves have become a little more sort of silly. And I think Ring and Ringu kind of bring that terrifying, nature back to it. And it's just such a crazy story. It's just like you watch a videotape and then 5 days later you die or whatever. It's just such a like simple but terrifying,
Well, no, and a lot of these stories have been in Japan for a long time, and The Ring was right around that time when Hollywood was just obsessed with remaking Japanese horror, Korean horror. There's some great directors in those countries that I feel like most American audiences never get to see, whether it's because they're, I don't want to read. With subtitles, which I think a lot of people do.
I don't want to read.
I don't want to read because that's just an impression. It's not
in defense of people that don't want to read subtitles. Because I am one of those people. I will say,
yeah, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, it's not.
Continue.
Here's the thing about it, though. Film is a visual medium. It's not a
correct.
And if I'm going to spend a lot of time looking at the bottom of the screen because I'm not a fast reader either,
I just learned Japanese.
It kind of bothers me. So like some films that are like great, they'll be great, but they're subtitled. It's like I don't want to read the whole time because I'm missing out.
Well, the best films,
the best films,
you shouldn't really. The best films, in my opinion, that are foreign films, you're hardly even looking down because
you should know what's going on.
Yeah, you should know. Yeah, it's just like people who say that they watch Spanish soap operas or Korean soap operas and they don't know how to speak the language and they don't even have subtitles. It's just that the director is good enough to elicit that response from you because he's showing you the story in a visual way. I just want to say it wasn't a damnation of anyone in the South. I was doing an impression. I saw Pan's Labyrinth and I was in the bathroom and there was a Southern bro with a backwards hat, a Von Dutch hat, peeing. And he was like, I'm leaving this movie. I don't want to read. And he left halfway through. So
no, I don't. I'm not defending them at all. I
heard you. I don't know. I saw you were defending it. Defending them.
You saw my Margaret Great Again hat.
You know
what I thought about though, real quick?
Yeah.
Before I forget, remember earlier we were talking about directors that have made that same movie twice?
Yes.
Didn't the guy that did Film Nikita, did he do that twice?
Luc Besson?
Yeah, Luc Besson.
Are you saying, did he do the...
I thought he did La Femme Nikita twice. Like a French version.
Well, he did Nikita, and then he did... that's a good question. La Femme Nikita...
yeah. And then... Am I wrong about that? Maybe I am wrong about that.
Well, there was a TV series.
Sorry to derail it.
Le Grand Bleu. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Bleu.
No, I was just going to say, though, that there's so many great directors and films, foreign films, and maybe we should do that as an episode, maybe depending on country. I don't know, but that's tough. But anyway, yeah, you shouldn't, don't limit yourself to only American films or films in English, just because there's some that have never been remade that are really great, or sometimes the original is better than the remake.
You know, it's funny, though, there is a movie that I don't mind reading, and that's Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards because I think the languages are actually they're used in an effective way. You know, like in the beginning when he's like, "Can we speak French?" and he like speaks French because he doesn't want the people under this because he suspects there's someone there. So
Right.
he doesn't want,
Right.
So he's talking in code basically.
But
anyway.
I guess we're going to deliberate.
Yeah.
I think this is a fun episode. We tried to move things along. We'll try to keep everything, total with deliberations and everything, 90 minutes or
4
less.
hours.
4 hours.
Yeah. Strap in.
Strap in. It is an epic. We're going to be the Return of the King of podcasts, where there's going to be like 6 endings.
We're gonna be the Terrence Malick of podcast episodes.
Yeah, I don't know how he would do a podcast. It would be, everything would be very personal, like and
silent
up close
for a long time.
It would just be us whispering, like, I think the greatest film of all time,
And then screaming all of a sudden.
meaning of life. Okay, cool. So we're going to deliberate, and we'll be right back.
And now it's time to announce the best of the best.
And we're back. That was a tough one. Honestly, it was hard to.
Yeah, it was very tough. There's a lot of films that are great remakes. We're kind of unsure on what the order would be here, so don't crucify us if it's vastly different than yours. I will make a note that we didn't include Ten Commandments, Wizard of Oz, Ben-Hur, all amazing films. His Girl Friday. We wanted to, but we just decided kind of to pull those away. We know they're older. Epic films, I suppose. So
Yeah.
plus they were remakes.
And Ocean's 11 we talked about, but we just mentioned it on the Steven Soderbergh episode. So it's a great remake. It should be in the discussion, but we were like, well, it's just one of those things. It shouldn't be a factor why we would put something in the list or not, but sometimes these movies cross our discussion, and I feel like sometimes they get a lot of talk, and maybe we shouldn't always include them in the top list. Give some other movies a time to shine.
Yeah, and we're not sure if this list is perfect. Honestly, none of our lists are perfect, but we tried to put them in an order that everyone was kind of happy. But they're all great films. So
Everyone being you and I.
exactly.
So at I'm gonna get this right. Tony Kukoc, Steve Kerr spots.
Correct.
We have our number 7 and 6 coming off the bench. At number 7, 3:10 to Yuma. I had mentioned before that this is a really, really great remake of pretty much plot-wise the same thing as the original film, but a modern Western told in as only Westerns can do, be told in that sort of nice, like sort of drawn-out classic way, building a lot of tension. I think James Mangold did a great job with this. I'd love to see more modern takes on Westerns. Something that can really maybe attract a modern audience. So 3:10 to Yuma is a great remake. And then number 6, War of the Worlds. We just talked about that with directed by Spielberg. It's a really good, modern version of the classic tale, and we thought it deserved to be one of the guys coming off the bench, the Robert Horry coming in and score that 3-pointer to win the whole thing.
Yeah, and if you have a chance, if you're at Universal Studios in Hollywood, definitely go on the tram ride because they have the set that Tom Cruise walks through with the giant plane that's completely destroyed and the houses are destroyed. It's a real plane that's torn apart, and it's a pretty fantastic set.
That was a cool piece in that movie, yeah.
Yeah.
Number 5.
True Lies. We talked about how much we admire James Cameron and his films, and this one, surprising to Mark, was a remake of La Totale, a French movie. And this one is really Schwarzenegger on all cylinders, James Cameron on all cylinders, and it's just a classic movie that not only is it a sort of satire of the action film, of the Hollywood spy movie, almost in a way that Last Action Hero was, but Last Action Hero took it a little bit further. But this film is just a great action movie in itself. So number 5, True Lies.
Number 4.
Dawn of the Dead, directed by Zack Snyder. It's a very difficult task to remake a film that's so revered by horror movie fans, like Dawn of the Dead, the original, the 78 version by George Romero. But Zack Snyder did a terrific job in modernizing his take on zombies. And, he made a bold move by having them actually run. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but in a zombie world, in a zombie movie, zombies running at full speed is pretty terrifying. So, number 4, Dawn of the Dead.
Number 3.
A Fistful of Dollars. Sergio Leone classic that kickstarted the spaghetti western trend and catapulted Clint Eastwood from a small-time TV star and a pool digger to one of the most famous actors, directors of all time. And
Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn. And if it ripped off Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo pretty much beat for beat, then the only thing that you can say is if you're going to rip off of someone, then rip off of a master. So number 3, A Fistful of Dollars.
Number 2.
His Girl Friday. I know, I'm just kidding. Wonderful film by Howard Hawks. It is The Thing. We've talked about The Thing a million times before on our John Carpenter episode, on our One Room, One Location episode. Not going to say much more about it, but to take a film that was a campy, black and white picture to a Kurt Russell classic with still some of the best visual effects and makeup around is a tall task, but John Carpenter handled it beautifully.
At number 1, the best of the best is
The Departed, a remake of the movie we talked about, Infernal Affairs. Excuse me. This Scorsese, I would say it's a Scorsese classic at this point. I was telling Neal that I when it came out, I was like, oh yeah, they're gonna, give him the Oscar for it. Should have given it to him for Goodfellas or whatever, Raging Bull. But they did this time. And it's like, it's a great film. I like it. But in subsequent viewings, separating that movie from the rest of the Scorsese canon, it's a really, really good film, a classic Scorsese picture. And it's a film. We were deciding on how to rank these, and we thought in the end, The Departed actually took the movie Infernal Affairs, which is a solid film as itself, but actually took it up a notch and improved upon it. And I think that's always the goal when you make a remake is to make it even better and make it its own thing. And at this point, I feel like it's another Scorsese classic.
Yeah, great performances all around. He put together a nice cast, and I think
You're not a cop.
The reason that this one, Mark was pushing for it to be number 1, we were discussing for a long time. I think the point that Mark made to me is this is one of the instances out of these films where the original film, was good. It was entertaining, but this film really took it to another level, and that's why it's number 1 for the fact that it raised the cast, raised the filmmaking, just raised the overall script and picture as a whole. So, The Departed, number 1. Hope you like this episode. We're going to figure out what we're going to do next week. Make sure to interact with us, on Twitter and Facebook.
You were saying best Pauly Shore movies? Is that what you're...
We're going to do best Pauly Shore movies.
I can tell you right now, Son-in-Law, Biodome.
In the Army Now. Encino Man. And
then you rank them. Episode done.
Episode done. Yeah, that's going to be a quick, 3-minute bonus episode. The Weasel. But yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's a tall order talking about remakes because there's so many of them. So I'm sure we forgot a lot of your favorites. Let us know which ones.
We will have to get into best comic book films soon, though.
Yeah, there's too many of them now. Too many, man. I'm just tired. I'm just tired.
But go see it. It was really good. And, just see movies in general. So, make sure you connect with us online. We're trying to keep our website updated every week. We release a new episode. The episodes page actually has like a lot of supplemental material.
Yep.
Along with the actual episode to listen to. There's a lot of photos. There's a lot of. I try to include a lot of videos that kind of explore what we've talked about even more. So there's a lot of good breakdowns of stuff online. So it's a good supplemental. Material to along with our episode. So please check out bestofthebestpod.com. Make sure to rate and review us, do all those things, and keep listening.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye.
When I was your age, they would say we could become cops or criminals. Today, what I'm saying is this. When you're facing a loaded gun, what's the difference?
Thanks for listening. If you think we've missed any of your favorites, message us on Twitter and Instagram using the handle @bestofbestpod and include your own top 5 by using the hashtag BOTB. We ask that you rate, review, and subscribe to Best of the Best on iTunes or your preferred podcast app. Have ideas for show topics, opinions, or just want to say hello? Send us an email to bestofthebestpod@gmail.com. Till next time, special thanks to Radar Studios and long live Don Hogue.